All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is R497 with episode 3 of Richie's Thoughts. Now, you're probably wondering, why isn't this the Crash Bandicoot retrospective that you've been waiting patiently to see? Well, it is a big project because remember, I am talking about every single game, every canceled project, and blah, 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 and just going more in depth with the history. But you're not here for that. But I just want to provide an explanation to those that were actually curious. No, what we're here today is to talk about Best Wishes, Pokemon Best Wishes, which is the fifth generation anime. The 10-year anniversary was this past week, and I figured I'd bring together some talented individuals to come together and discuss our 10-year retrospective of the series and, what we liked about it, what we didn't like about it, and, some other things that came along the way. Now, before we get into the topic, I'd like to introduce my fellow friends who will be joining me for this project. First person I'd like to introduce is Terrell, aka the Insane Game Freak. How you doing, sir?
Yo, how you guys doing?
And that, my friends, is the what I consider the Best Wishes ambassador. Obviously, if you've seen his reviews back in the day, he reviewed the entire series, and around that time was when I started to watch it, and obviously, it's an honor to have that type of prestigious in this video. So,
Don't put me on that
we're making good
pedestal,
progress.
goddammit.
Next person is actually Tyrone of all people. How you doing, sir?
Hey, what's up?
AK.
I don't know how I got here, but I'm here.
See, he was dragged against his will, and because we do that here on the R497 channel.
Can you remove the tape from my wrist?
No.
All right.
Well, I'm surprised you're more compliant with the fact that you have tape on your wrist.
Listen, I'm gonna be talking about something I know a lot about, so I think I might as well just stick around. It'd be weird to be kidnapping me for some subject I had no fucking clue on.
And I mean, I appreciate the honesty, buddy. And the next person is Polly, aka Age of Traits. How you doing?
Hi, I'm doing good.
That's good. That's good. Obviously, we gotta have the rivals ambassador in the way, so it's always interesting to have that perspective.
So y'all just gonna be cross promoting this entire thing. I already know what's up.
Well, yeah, of course. They gotta prep up the folks. Gotta prep up the people. But last but not least, Mr. TSS Killer, who I consider to be the historian of the anime. How you doing, sir?
Doing fantastic. I wish I was feeling I was in a better mood today, but at least hey, we have this, so at least maybe I can get my frustrations out with Best Wishes, even though I don't think it's a really bad series, but I'm willing to talk about it anyway. So let's get going.
Oh yeah, of course. You gotta start somewhere. Well, before we actually do go into the Best Wishes series and just giving like a summarization of what we think about it, I kind of do want to talk about, and I think TSS is probably like the only person that's probably more interested in it because he does have, I believe, a video of it. Basically, what he talked about the other day was the pre. He can correct me if I'm wrong after this, but basically it was like the pre-TV specials. The specials that they do leading up to the series that say, "Hey, this is coming," and all that stuff. So, TSS, if you know what I'm talking about, I'll let you have the floor to talk about those specials because I know that you wanted to bring that up for today's video. So, go right on ahead.
Well, actually, there's actually a few of those specials. Actually, they all occurred on September 23rd, 2010. There's three specials. There was a 12 p.m. special, a special at 1:51 p.m., another one at like 4 o'clock. There was at least like four of them, and the first one was actually the longest one. I just wanted to get it up here. So it's called the best wishes Matsuri. And if you look at the air date for that specific thing, it says it's a Pokemon Festival Best Wishes. There's three broadcasts, and then right before the episode airs, there's a 3-minute countdown, because this is the only time, this is the first time before 2016 that the anime started before the top of the hour or bottom of the hour. So actually, sorry, this is crazy. This is actually like four specials. There was one at 8 o'clock in the morning. Then there was one at 12 p.m., which was the live broadcast. Then there was 13:55 or 1:55 p.m. and then 3:51. And actually, I was actually wrong on my post on Twitter. That special aired at 3:51 p.m., not 1:51 p.m. So I'm going to go and change that. But basically, what happened was, it was a stage show in Roppongi Hills Arena in Roppongi, Tokyo, and they had a event the whole day. So you had festivities, like you have kids on stage, you have the Pokemon Sunday crew on there, because Pokemon Smash did not appear until after Best Wishes debuted, about a month later after this. So it was still all the characters from Pokemon Sunday. Then at the 3:51 airing, Rika came out and did 4 songs. She did "Okay" in 1 key down. She did "Rival," where she completely train wrecks the the verses, which was really funny, but I didn't get that recorded. So, Phil, if you're listening, where the hell's the video? Because I don't have it.
Hashtag where's the video?
Where's the video? I've been waiting 10 years. But and then after that, she did "Type Wild," one verse and a chorus, and then the camera pulls away because it was only like a 9-minute thing. But she starts singing "High Touch" by herself in the original key, and you can actually hear that on the video before they cut away. Now, at the end, at the last part of the special, which was after a show called Piramekino, which is like a variety show before Pokemon aired at that time, you hear Rika doing Mazase Pokemon Master, the MPM 98 actually, and is it an MPM 98? No, it was original. No, it was original because it was original key. It was an A. So yeah. So that came out. They came the last chorus, and then they had like a huge countdown. They were talking about, Satoshi. We were talking about Iris. They were talking about the Rockets. About how different they were going to be, and then live countdown, and then Best Wishes 1 and 2 was airs, and then there was a little bit of a segment after that with the whole credits of the entire festival broadcast. But it was basically like goodbyes. So realistically, it was festivities all day, and then of course they were talking about the games, because it came out around the same time. I think it came out the same damn day, which is really quite crazy. Or a few days before, I have to remember. But yeah, the live broadcast stuff. If you were in the know back then and you actually watched these, then it was an experience to behold, because it was just a great exercise and a great proof that TV Tokyo and Pokemon Company can really put on a great show, promoting an anime. Now, unfortunately, they didn't do it afterwards. They didn't have as much fanfare for X and Y. Well, that's indicative of the ratings tanking, but we'll get into that later. But Best Wishes 1 was the Best Wishes 1 was like in the 6s or 7s, and that was the last time that it was in that thing. Now, in the future, when PM.net will be getting the timeline, the ratings timeline, you will see it's been a gradual decline since the very beginning up until now. So it's indicative of the series is not gaining a lot of ratings anymore. That's why they had the time change again, because it didn't work. So, but overall, great specials. You could take a look at the specials on my Twitter, a few of them, but that doesn't tell the whole story. There's like a huge amount of content, but I will have to say, wow, what a way to begin a generation. Too bad it didn't end right, but at least the start was okay.
Well, yeah, we'll get to the way that ended, because obviously I can tell from the sense of the room that there's probably some variations of opinions when it comes to that. But I figure I'd let you have the floor for that one, because Best Wishes was the last time, as you just stated like a few minutes ago, where there's obviously the specials, TV specials that led up to the premiere, and the way that it was done was pretty incredible for what it was. And
Yeah,
I
it was
think
the last time alive. It was the last time a live special was done.
alive, yes, but
Yeah, because X and Y was the Road to Kalos thing, but that's not live. It was just a thing
Right.
beforehand.
yeah, but anyways, the last comment I'll make on this one is that I thought the ones for Best Wishes, I thought I thought that was the last time where I kind of enjoyed so much of what they've done. So it was kind of sad, as you stated. So, but with that being said, obviously I have a whole anime to discuss, so let's get right into it. So basically, what I'll probably end up doing is just give you like a basic summary, which isn't very much because, I mean, basically fifth generation anime. Ash goes to Unova, brand new region, starts anew. Obviously his main goal is to go to the league. And what do you do to get to the league? Well, you have to get 8 gym badges. So that means he has to fight 8 people, win those battles, go to the league, and then hopefully win, which is basically his premise for almost every region, with the exception of Alola to some degree. So I guess the first question I should ask people is actually about Ash in particular. And the reason why I want to bring this question up is because unless you already knew ahead of time and we're not baited into thinking, oh well, is there a chance he won't appear? That type of thing. Because I feel like Best Wishes, at least in my view, because as someone who came in during the Diamond and Pearl league during the Japanese times, that was Best Wishes was kind of like my first time ever walking into a pre-series hype. And one of the pre-series hypes, if I remember correctly, was just, oh, is he going to appear? Because remember, one of the first initial posters didn't even have him on there. And obviously the small little teasers that they had afterwards didn't even show him at all. But part of me always thought that, they're going to show him one way or another. Maybe they're just going to hide away his design. So I guess I should ask this first question to Terrell, because obviously, the Best Wishes ambassador. It's not very much of a hard question, but basically what I wanted to know from you, buddy, is did you ever thought back then, before Best Wishes was announced, when Best Wishes was announced, but before Ash was announced to appear on the series, did you ever think that he wouldn't be on the show? Or did you always think, he would always appear?
Always appear. And there was really no doubt in my mind that they had any intention to switch. Even though Black and White as a game is a lot different than the other titles, there was nothing. It's not that it's just Pokemon, unfortunately, is very habitual. So there was nothing to make me believe that they were going to all of a sudden switch. The fact that Iris is even considered a companion, I was like, all right, yeah, he's probably coming then.
Oh no, yeah. Obviously, when Iris and Cylon were announced to be the companions, I thought, okay, well, Cylon, if I remember correctly, was the gym leader. And I say if I remember correctly because I was talking about in the sense of when I first saw it in 2010, which is when we didn't know much about the games other than like maybe half of it. So I thought maybe this was kind of like their way of redoing Kanto. And funny enough, to my little surprise back then, as a upcoming 8th grader, little did I know that this generation was going to be and is going to be a soft reboot of the series, which obviously we'll talk about down the road about how we felt about the execution of that. So okay, yeah. So I guess the consensus to say appropriately was that hey, Ash was always going to be in Best Wishes, and I always tend to agree with that because it didn't really make sense to me that he wouldn't appear. Obviously, of course, there's some people that would tend to disagree, but whatever. He's already in here. So Best Wishes episode 1. I guess what we're gonna do is talk about the first 2 episodes a little more in depthly, and then the other ones we could just obviously give our thoughts right from the get-go without much of a summary. But the reason I wanted to talk about the first 2 episodes was because I thought the circumstances of the first 2 were kind of like interesting. Obviously there are some tropes that were done before, but not to the degree that it did. But for those of you that are wondering, or not just wondering, but for those of you that have forgotten, basically to give you a quick summarization before I ask the next person what they thought about it. Obviously, he arrives to Unova, and before he arrives to Unova, Professor Oak says, hey, why don't you come with me? I'm on vacation time. And I guess one of his vacation spots used to be Unova, or it was Unova. So I'm like, okay, I mean, this is their way of trying to, tie in everything together. And then the next scene, you have Team Rocket, not in the usual form that you would expect them to be after Gen 4. They were a bit more serious. And then you have Giovanni just basically telling them that, hey, Unova region is our next mission. This is what we want to do. This is your objective. It's sort of like a military leader telling his commandments, we got to do this, just leading them to the charge. And this was like new at the time because leading up to Generation 5, we always known Team Rocket to be villains, obviously, but we never really seen them a lot as like this serious bunch of bad guys. We always seen Team Rocket to be a bit more, obviously goofy, silly, and basically the comedic relief of the series. So to see them in this fashion was obviously a different pace for the characters, and obviously all three of them, and by all three of them I mean Ash, Pikachu, Team Rocket, they all arrived to Unova. And then obviously a few seconds later, Zekrom appears, which sadly was his only appearance really. Well, technically second episode, the first like minute or so, but other than that, I mean, I thought the way they handled Zekrom was pretty sad. And then obviously after Zekrom left the first time, Pikachu basically can't use electric type attacks, which is kind of fucky, because obviously he can't use electric type attacks, but he's kind of useless unless he gets a W under his belt with just Iron Tail or a Quick Attack. But unfortunately, his first test to that was Trip, who is the Generation 5 anime's rival for Ash. He considers Ash to be a boonie because from Kanto, and then they have a battle afterwards. And obviously, with the result of Zekrom coming in and fucking Pikachu up, it turned out the way that you expected. He ended up losing to Snivy, a beginner Pokemon, and obviously that caused a lot of uproar. Although, in my opinion, while it was kind of dumb, the circumstances though were kind of like somewhat understandable. And then basically, just to quickly summarize up, obviously Zekrom comes around again, just does his thing. He then leaves, and then Pikachu, through that somehow, just gets his electrical powers back. And then he meets Iris, who, for the first time, we saw the, are you a kid joke and the trope. And then Team Rocket comes back. They capture their new Pokemon at the region, which is Woobat. They almost won, but of course, in typical Pokemon fashion, they always find a way to ruin that, which is having Oshawott use its Razor Shell, or throw its Razor Shell to the balloon, which then gets them onto the ground. They get their Pokemon back. And obviously they get tired, and they recover at the Pokemon Center. And then, it leaves at a cliffhanger with Oshawott at the end, just, looking on, which is a very obvious foreshadowing of eventual capture. So I guess the first question I should ask, I'm going to ask Polly for this one, actually. Based on you watching the first two episodes of the Best Wishes series, because to me, I always thought Best Wishes had like one of the best starts to the series, and if you want to include the first other three, which would make 5, and that's fine. But my question to you is, what were your initial thoughts of the first two episodes as you first saw it, whether it was Japanese dub or English dub? Like, what were your thoughts on the way that they started off with these first few episodes?
Well, I definitely have a lot of mixed feelings about these first few episodes. I think originally this was a series that I really wanted to give a chance because this is the first series that I personally started out like I came into Pokemon during Diamond and Pearl, like literally during the middle, kind of towards the Galactic Battles era. So since this was fresh to me, like I was getting to experience it as a fan, alongside everyone else, and I definitely saw a lot of the backlash from it because I was part of the forums at the time. Yeah, I had mixed feelings. Obviously, I wasn't too keen on the whole definite confirmation of Ash being 10 years old because I guess I just always assumed that he was aging. He just kind of looked like he was getting older and more mature in Diamond and Pearl series. So that was kind of where I'm like, all right, like where is the show going now? Because it's like, are we gonna get any real progression with him? Like it really felt like, in terms of Ash, it felt like a reboot, and that upset me. But I definitely liked the Kanto parallels, especially with when we met Iris, because that really reminded me of the banter that Ash had with Misty in the first few episodes. How it's like they were traveling together, but they weren't really traveling together. And then Iris and Misty watched the first gym battle, but they weren't doing it because they really cared or anything. So it was kind of like this funny tsundere like relationship. And I definitely enjoy that a lot, because as much as I loved the Diamond and Pearl trio, it was kind of nice that we went back to more of a different dynamic between these three very, very different characters. And was it the third episode is the Sandile one, I believe?
Yep, Sandile.
Yeah, that was a good one. I'd say I appreciate this series despite the backlash, for starting out kind of on like, this is the most like the freshest note we've ever started out on, because everything else has been the continuation of like the previous series. It's like we even see Ash in his like original outfits in the last / first episodes of the AG series, the Johto Diamond and Pearl, because it's all very seamlessly connected. So it was kind of nice getting that fresh new feel in this series. But yeah, like I said, mixed feelings, and obviously it's always disappointing to see the whole Zekrom and Team Rocket set up when nobody knew that earthquake was going to happen. But it's just going back to it. It's just disappointing to see what could have been. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, don't worry. As a very passionate fan of the Kanto two-parter, unfortunately, fortunately for us, for those that are always interested in hearing opinions, we will talk about that eventually. And speaking of Iris, that's the next topic I wanted to bring up. And the next person I wanted to ask about in regards to Iris is Tyrone. Tyrone, I guess the question to you is that I guess you're somewhat of a pre-thought of Iris as a character when you first saw that, hey, she was going to be part of the crew. And as time went on, and by time went on, I mean just like the entirety of the series, did your opinion of Iris change? Did it change for the better? Did it change for the good? Or were you neutral about it? What were your thoughts about Iris as a character in Best Wishes?
Well, to answer that, I do have to give my first impressions of Best Wishes.
Oh, no, yeah. Go ahead. Absolutely.
Because going into I guess it's also the mindset of how you approach something. Because going into Best Wishes, I got introduced to it by the trailers that I kept seeing online. I didn't get to see all the stuff that like TSS saw prior to Best Wishes, and I certainly wasn't a avid watcher of Pokemon in its original Japanese form with English subtitles. Yet, in fact, Diamond and Pearl was the last series that I ended off watching it just dubbed. I didn't get to watch. I didn't get to get into Pokemon Japanese until this series. Actually, this was my first introduction to it, because at this point the internet was readily available for me to start watching things frequently online, including the Pokemon anime. I was watching anime at the time, but I didn't get into Pokemon's anime via Japanese until here. And it was only because the trailers, one, Diamond and Pearl was going to it was still ending in America, but we were getting trailers for Best Wishes. I believe, if that's correct. I think we were getting trailers for Best Wishes around that time. Yeah.
Yep.
So because I realized that all anime comes to Japanese first before it gets over to us at the time, I figured, why not Pokemon then? So I decided to start doing some research, and that's also how I ran across some of the anime openings, and I realized anime openings are way better in Japanese than they are in English at that time. So when I saw the trailers, I saw some things I was starting to notice. And I guess it's just when you're an avid Pokemon watcher, you start noticing some things that seem rather familiar. It showed that Ash was catching up a dove in one of the trailers, but what he did before throwing the Pokeball is what caught my interest. Ash turned his hat backwards, and that may not seem important at the time, but when I was looking at it, it actually felt very nostalgic to see him do that. To see him just flip his hat backwards, because he did it in a way that was very similar to the OG series, where, originally Ash would turn his hat backwards if he was getting intense into a battle or he was catching a Pokemon. And then also I saw that Iris and Silent were introduced in that trailer in different ways. They were just shown off in like random clips. And I thought to myself, wait a minute. And I believe at this point I was really into the games too. So they were, while Best Wishes, the game didn't come out yet, I think they did give us some scans of what to expect in the games. So I believe we did get some scans of Iris and Silent, both confirmed as gym leaders at the time. So
Right.
because of that, I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, he's not. More specifically, Iris was the one that caught my attention, because
Iris was not a gym leader. The Iris was not anything until Black and White 2.
Oh yeah.
Right.
I know. Well, no. In Pokemon White, she's the gym leader.
Right. He's correct.
Yeah, Drayden's the gym leader if you choose Pokemon Black.
Right. Version
Yeah.
difference.
But I believe what caught my eye was that when Ash threw the Pokeball and hit Iris in the head, I was thinking to myself, well, wait a minute, hold on a second. Iris is going to be his traveling companion, not the female character for the next game. And then I also noticed Silent, and I'm like, wait a minute, so Silent's a traveling companion. This is just like the original series with Brock and Misty. So in my brain, I was thinking, well, okay, we got Ash flipping his hat backwards. We got two gym leaders as traveling companions. This is very reminiscent of being a reboot. Like in my head, they didn't announce it or anything, but in my head, I was just like, this is reboot material. So going into that, with that mindset, even when they said that Ash is 10 years old again, that was, like Polly said, kind of cringy, but at the same time, I just was like, I rolled with it at the time, because I was like, reboot, that means he's starting over. And when they also did that, I believe when they moved forward, he ended up meeting up with Iris first, which I thought was very interesting, because it's much like how Ash met Misty first, except instead of flying a bite, Pikachu ends up shocking Iris. The little kid joke that she does, or the quote,
Yeah.
it didn't bug me as much as it bugged a lot of others. But at the time, I only seen it that one time, and I never watched Best Wishes dubbed until it later came out dubbed, and I just wanted to compare and contrast which one was better and which one was worse. And then I started to notice the little kid joke more. I don't know what the difference was. I don't know. Maybe it's just because the way she says it obviously is going to be different, because it's said in Japanese versus English. But as a character, I believe Iris was very interesting, considering they really wanted to dig deep into the fact that this is a very nature-based character. She swings on trees. She knows what berries do what. She makes herbs and stuff to cure Pokemon of certain conditions. So she's taking the very natural nature's route, which would be reminiscent of Pokemon White. Whereas Silent is the more socialite. He's the one that's taking things scientifically. He's more the logic based. He's more of the one that goes through what society goes through. So he's opposing. He's the Pokemon Black of this particular thing, but Ash serving as neutral. I like this dynamic, and I believe it works debatably a lot better than Ash, Brock, and Misty. Whereas Ash, Brock, and Misty, their dynamic is really funny for comic standpoint and for very great bonding moments. But in terms of theme and narrative, Silent and Iris carry it a lot better here, because essentially it's them only reborn. It's Brock and Misty only reborn into a new light, which I really do respect. And I do also like the turn of the irony of the joke of Iris being the one to call Ash and basically immature, when she herself doesn't have much control over her Pokemon.
Yeah,
So
that's the irony.
Yeah, I thought that was a very interesting concept to roll with. So with these traveling companions and Ash doing those things, even him losing to Trip didn't bother me that much, because, two conditions. One, I thought this was him starting anew, and two, Zekrom had already crippled Pikachu of like 2 of its moves, so I didn't hold it against it. The time that Ash wasted trying to figure out why he couldn't use moves was time that Trip didn't waste using attacks, so I just logically put those two together. I mean, overall, though, I thought the series was going at a really great start, at least to me.
Right, right. And funny enough, just to draw a little bit of comparison to Iris before the next question, I suppose, is that, there was, I guess you could say there was like a compare and contrast because both Ash and Iris at some point literally had trouble controlling and having their most powerful Pokemon listen to them. I mean, Ash had it going with Charizard, and Iris with Excadrill at first, who just didn't want to do anything, and then Dragonite, who was obviously a bit wild and a bit rogue. So she had two arcs to deal with that, and while Ash only had that with Charizard, you can still see like the compare and contrast that they were going for. And honestly, I might as well just say this, because obviously we've already established that the Gen 5 anime was definitely a soft reboot because you could definitely look back to the first generation anime and look back to and come back to the Generation 5 anime, and you can definitely see like a lot of similar things and what they were going for as far as like what was like what they did before and how they're gonna do it in like this more modern touch at the time, of course. And obviously, of course, if we're talking about Iris, you gotta talk about Silent. I thought Silent was an interesting character. Obviously, he was gonna fill the role of Brock because obviously there had to be someone that can cook. There had to be someone that could provide like an analytical look into like Ash's battles, because you know how like sometimes Brock would be saying, oh, this typing does really well against this typing. If Ash has the confidence, he can do it. That type of thing. Silent was going to fill that role. But obviously, my quick opinion, because obviously I like, majority of the time to be handed over to my, companions over here. But I thought Silent was an enjoyable character. I thought his tropes were kind of funny because, the tasting time and the whole gimmick he goes through to say, oh, I'm an expert of trains. I'm an expert of, this and that. I thought it was pretty funny at the time because, again, it was like a new trope I haven't seen at the time. And I say at the time because, as stated before, while I have been a Pokemon fan for a long time, at the time I didn't really watch too much of the old school anime to really know much of what they were going for themselves. So I don't know at the time if they were already doing something like that already or this was like something new. So I guess the next person I'm going to ask is Mr. TSS. My question to you, sir, is your thoughts of basically the same question I asked the others about Iris, but basically the same question goes for Silent. Like, what do you think? What do you think about him as a character? And what did you like about him? What did you not like about him? Like, give me your overall thoughts of Silent as a character and best wishes.
Before we do that, I want to just say I have a couple things to say about Iris really fast.
Oh, sure, go for it.
About 30 seconds here.
Right.
The Aoyuki did much better job saying "kodomo ne," and because she was more dynamic in her deliveries and also in her situational. The problem is the dub kind of treated the Iris as cold instead of more of like a, I would say, a condescending, pessimistic, rather than being just a cold-blooded in terms of speaking, in terms of the attitude. That's the kind of difference between what the Japanese side and the English side has. However, though, for Dent or Silent, what I really liked about Dent was basically he's a better Brock, better Takashi in every way. He's much more logistical. He has a much better mind in terms of being able to think on the fly and also with just vast amounts of knowledge. He is a rank sommelier, which should have been to S, but again, that's another thing. I'm just talking, my ass at this point. But the whole thing that he can be an expert at fishing, he can be an expert at trains, which I take to my heart for granted, basically, because it's the same thing as me. But to be multi-talented like that and be very supportive and being very a logistical thinker makes him one of my favorite characters in the entire meta series. I knew from the very beginning, even in the first episodes that that we meet up with him, I knew that it was going to be something different. I knew that Mamoru Miyano was going to hit this one out of the park, and he did. Also hitting E6s in the freaking the haunted house episodes. That was pretty freaking cool. High notes galore. Very, very good. He would hit like B4, like that, all the time. And, very, very dynamic personality. And once again, it's a big difference between Mamoru Miyano and in the dub for, Dent versus Silent. So again, it all, for people that said, oh, the Pokemon anime is the same. No, it's not. Because because the voice acting dynamic is different, and the musical side was at least at this time, the dub had the audacity, at least, to keep all of the music intact in the first 8 episodes. And
Thank God for that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure maybe that was just a production thing, or a production timeline not met. But at that time, they were getting better with the scripts, and they kept the music. But the whole dynamic changes between Japanese and English. And I've been watching the Japanese at that point for 6 years. So I was really excited to see what direction the series went. I definitely could tell that there were some nods with the older series, like I said, like Tyrone said with Satoshi in his backwards cap thing, and Iris being very like tsundere-like in terms of like traveling. It's kind of like that. So I'll have to say for Dent or Silent, probably out of all the companions, definitely top 3. Definitely would like him back in the series. I mean, like I said, if you look at Mamoru Miyano's vocal performances throughout this series, top notch, absolutely top notch.
Oh no, yeah, I definitely the way his Japanese voice actor performed as Silent in the Japanese version definitely was one of the major components of me being drawn more to Silent as a character, because I thoroughly enjoyed his performance. And obviously when I watched the dub, I call Best Wishes like the last tolerable dub, and I still mean it to this day, because it was really the last dub where I could just sit and watch and not just feel like I'm about to have like an ear aneurysm anytime soon. And I find Jason Griffith, if I sorry if I mispronounced the last name, but right. I thought he did not as well as his Japanese counterpart, but he still did well, to the point where I could just sit and watch and just be like, you know what, I'm okay with this. I'm satisfied with the performance. So Terrell, I guess I'll ask you the same question as well. What did you think about Silent as a character? Were there some things that were there some things you didn't like about him as a character? What were some things you liked about him? And most importantly, if you have any, what were some of the things that they missed for his character during his time at Best Wishes?
I'm gonna kind of pull TSS and quickly throw my Iris comments in there, because I probably won't get another chance to anyway.
Well, actually, let me just put this out there then before you do that. If you wish to throw your comments in after I ask, let's say 2 people within, not the other 2, for a character opinion, you're more than welcome to. I'm just trying to, not as often do I actually host or manage a flow between like 3 or 4 other people. So, if you wish to throw in your opinion for a previous question, then you're more than happy to. So anyways, continue.
So as far as Iris is concerned, Iris is the way I look at Best Wishes as a whole is a better version of Kanto in almost every way. I think the only thing it doesn't really hit as well as maybe the comedy, and even depending on that's somewhat debatable. Iris, to me, her whole premise is kind of in the same direction as Misty, except I like the idea that she's a character who suffers from learning. She's a different type of learner. In the traditional way they were being taught in her village, she ended up struggling because of that, and I think it fucked up her confidence, which is what Iris is at the beginning of the series, is a girl who's like lacking in confidence but knows how to fake being confident. And throughout the course of the series, you get to see her grow and become more confident in herself, even to the point where like she's being recognized by fucking champions and gym leaders, for God's sakes. I truly appreciate her development. That's why I say her Dragon Village episodes are some of the best episodes in the fucking series, because it's such a culmination episode. There's this is she's a character who unfortunately gets a lot of hate because she has a joke that people view as somewhat repetitive. It actually feels more repetitive when you compare it to Silent, who has more variety in his comedy. And I also appreciate that she's very funny. When we were rewatching episodes on KG stream, she's very funny. She's one of those characters that you wouldn't think would be as funny as she ends up being. And it's when it's just her and Ash before Silence even enters the picture. She's very consistently funny. And I like the wild girl angle they go from, because it's very different from the other girls. But it's not like tomboy, the character, which is what Missy I felt like was going for. I like it a lot, but I recognize that some people don't want to go through. They view her arc as somewhat of a slog because of how repetitive she is with certain jokes. I'm also going to agree with you, Richie, as far as Silent. I thought Jason Griffith, which I know him, and I'm pretty sure Tyrone knows him as our. I don't know. Most people I think like him as the Sonic voice, but that's what we mostly know him for. Even though he's done a bunch of other stuff, I think the dude has a lot of versatility, and he. And Silent, I think he's one of the better voices because of it. Silent, to me, I've been pretty straightforward about this, is my favorite male companion we've had in the series, period. The best thing about him is not only his variety and his jokes and his personality, and that he has so many different interests, but this man used to be a gym leader, like our old pal Brock, but he's actually good at being a fucking gym leader, in the sense that he can analyze and understand the teams and or people he's fighting, the Pokemon and trainers he's fighting, to the point where he curb stomped the hell out of Ash's rival before Ash even got a chance to fight him legitimately. And I appreciated that, not necessarily because of Trip, but because it showed that he was that he can handle his own. And he was pretty consistent with that up until probably after the end arc, where he kind of fell into filler hell, but we'll talk about that later. He's just a fun character to me.
Yep.
He's well balanced in a lot of ways for me personally, and I fucking love him. He's literally my favorite male character. He's fucking great. But yeah.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Now, before we get to Paulo's opinion about both characters, I do want to point out, and this was something I kind of wish I pointed out earlier, but I figure I might as well since we're talking about Silent. I know TSS talked about like the Japanese counterparts' performance in that one scene of the haunted house episode, which I believe was around like the 30s section. I could be wrong about that. I think it was 30 or 31. I'm not too sure, but I'm pretty sure it was in the 30s, because it wasn't, or if it's not in the 30s, it's probably 28, 29. But anyways, while TSS looks that up and then confirms the information.
It's 29.
Oh, 29. Okay. So right before the 30s. I thought both voice actors for that one scene where, the statue falls right in front of them and Silent looks over, obviously frightens, events screams while running away. I might consider this as an underrated opinion, because I'm not sure if all people agree, and I'm not just referring to the people in this call, but I'm referring to the people in the community who have seen both versions of the scene. But I thought both voice actors did really well for that scene in particular. I thought both of them had like the right power of scream. I thought they performed it really well, because obviously sometimes voice actors kind of bullshit with like their screams and they make it seem kind of like fake-ish. But when I listened to both of them, both Jason and the Japanese counterpart's name, who I can't really pronounce, so I'll just call him
Mamoru Miyano. It's Mamoru Miyano.
Okay.
Mamoru. Yeah, Mamoru.
Mamoru. Okay, so
Mamoru.
So
yeah, whatever.
That's gonna be a joke for today. But basically, I thought both of them did really well in that scene in particular, and I thought it was just, I was about to say generic. I thought both performances were really genuine. It wasn't like for show, ironically enough, but I thought it came straight from the heart. But I just thought I'd throw that in there. So before we move on to the next topic, I do want to ask Polly for her opinion about both characters, about like basically what she thought about both of them, and obviously what she liked about it, what she didn't like about them, and things that they could have done better on for both characters. So Polly, I'm leaving the floor to you to answer about both of these characters.
I think I kind of want to echo everyone else's thoughts because I think they did a lot of different things with both Iris and Silent, but I think unfortunately they just never got to a certain point where they were able to fully develop them into having an actual like realized dream. And I feel like, and I don't want to limit that just to Iris and Silent, because I even felt similarly with Misty, with the Alola gang. That's just something, unfortunately, these writers sometimes fall a little short unless they're made to be a protagonist alongside Ash in the case of May and Dawn. I don't like ranking Pokegirls. I never really did. But I have to say that I think Iris has the best backstory out of all of the female companions. Honestly, I teared up watching that episode where she was at the school and she didn't like being there and she was playing and fooling around and she just felt like she didn't fit in well. It was just nothing like I've ever seen before. And I like how that kind of tied into her origins of being from the village of dragons and how they do things differently and have a different culture. And I don't know, that was just, and like Terrell said, I also liked a lot of the dragon episodes were just very touching, especially when she calmed down, was it the Hydreigon?
Hydreigon.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was a fantastic episode. I just felt like after that, it's like it just fell flat. And I also wish, and I feel the same way with Silent too. And even I want to go as far as to venture with their rivals too. It's like there really wasn't much of a rivalry, aside from the Don George arcs. So it was just kind of disappointing. I love them both as characters, but just there wasn't really much of a following through with their development. Like TSS, I call him Mamo because I have a friend who's obsessed with him and obsessed with Silent. He's a singer. I'm just so surprised that Silent or Iris never got their own endings. I was so jealous that they did that for the characters in X and Y, because I think it just would have been so. Because he's like a pop star in Japan. I'm just so surprised they didn't have him do a song.
The reason behind that is X and Y, they switched over to Sony. So Sony Music Entertainment, they use that as a vehicle. They use the anime as a vehicle to selling records. As still Pikachu records was still here. Kadokawa hadn't bought them yet, so they weren't as focused on selling CDs as Sony does.
Well, that was a missed opportunity, but that's understandable. Yeah, that's all I can really say for them. I even though Brock is my favorite character, and I don't really like comparing Brock and Silent either, or Brock, Silent, and Clement. There's just so much about him that's so entertaining to me. Like I feel like I kind of I see a little bit of myself in every Pokemon character, but I see myself in him where he just has all these hobbies and he is working towards a goal, and I just wish they kind of could have done a little bit more with him. So yeah.
Oh no, yeah, most definitely, especially to what someone pointed out earlier about like the fact that he's like only in rank A connoisseur, and we never really got to saw like an arc where or an episode, whatever you want to call it, where he's at least trying to contest for rank S. I thought that was obviously a missed opportunity for Silent as a character, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure why they didn't, think about adding that. Maybe they just didn't think it was that important to add into the series, which I disagree with. But hey, it's been 10 years, so we have to get over it eventually, right? So, but
I would actually say it's because of a few things.
go for it.
Number one, Tohoku earthquake, which ruined the whole plasma versus rocket thing. That's number one. Number two, since they were completely disheveled, and also Black and White 2 was a thing, so they had to backtrack and say, oh my God, there's something here, we have to rewrite, and they have to implement that stuff. And on top of that, since this is the first Japanese series to have seasons, they kind of missed the mark. And everything season 1 was fine. Season 2, which starts around BW 86, after BW 86, that was missed opportunity. And then they went into episode N because it was Best Wishes season 2 episode N, so it was a separate arc within that season 2. And then you have Decalora Island, Decalora Adventure, and it was only there because they had to pad to X and Y. So again, the whole thing with the Tohoku earthquake, that they really messed everything up in terms of the timing. And I'm pretty sure that if the rocket plasma arc that they were originally going to partake in would have happened on time, I think we would have had would have had better pacing with the writing. They would have a better opportunity to give Dent and Iris a better transitional character development.
Oh no, I agree. Obviously, the earthquake did ruin quite a bit in the direction of the series, I would imagine, because I'm pretty sure they had some plans and ideas that they wanted to do, but because of that happening, they were just like, oh shit, we're scrambled, we're lost. And interestingly enough, the next topic is Team Rocket. And Team Rocket came into Unova different. And I mean, I say different because, like, obviously when you watch the first 4 generations, or if you're aware of the first 4 generations of the series and the anime, Team Rocket, when you look at them, were nothing more than, because obviously they were villains, but they were the comedic relief villains. They're the people that on screen were supposed to bring like a laugh. They're supposed to be a bit goofy. And yes, while I get that they're villains, but they weren't like villains. Like, they're not the ones that would be like completely evil, as we've seen in other shows and stuff, I would imagine. But before we get into like asking you guys, of course, for the your opinions about Team Rocket, I guess for our own minds, at least for this generation, basically what I think about Team Rocket in this generation was that yes, they were different, and I'm aware that and I'm aware that it's kind of like an unpopular opinion, at least to certain people. Not referring to anyone in this call, but I'm just referring to the community in general. I know it's somewhat of an unpopular opinion to say that, hey, I thoroughly enjoyed Team Rocket and Best Wishes. I get that, it may be considered an unpopular opinion. However, it obviously, opinion's opinion. And to me, it's like, I definitely enjoyed Team Rocket in this series because, again, this was kind of like, a first taste into the what if. Like, what if Team Rocket was like more serious villains that would like do missions for Team Rocket to try to take over the Unova region, and how would that go? I think Best Wishes did a good job of showing us that scenario, and I thought their arcs were enjoyable. I know we didn't get to see the original Rocket versus Plasma, which is still sad to this day, but hey, that's unfortunately it had to happen because of the earthquake. But like I said, I did definitely enjoy their arcs. The subway arc definitely got me hooked. The Landers, Tornadoes, Thunderous arc, the first one at Milos Island, I thought that was pretty enjoyable. And then obviously they had their first connecting arc with Archeops, where first they stole the data from Juniper, then they went over to Charstone Cave to steal the electric rocks, and then after that, they pretty much assembled all that together, and they were trying to actually resurrect, Tortuga. So basically, that arc was kind of like a plan of development for a while, if you're looking at it that way. So I definitely, and obviously, of course, can't forget the Metaletta arc, because the Metaletta arc, I think was like, I think at the Team Rocket versus Team Plasma arc, the way that it was supposed to be, had that aired, I probably would have had that as number one. But because that's not the case, I would then have the Metaletta arc at number one, because I thoroughly enjoyed the build up to that arc. I thought the way that they involved Giovanni into there was like their way of saying, hey, I know this isn't Team Rocket versus Team Plasma, but this is like another way that we can insert him into the show, or the series of Best Wishes. So, and the way, obviously they had, you could tell that like the animation from the trailer was kind of like used. Like for example, during the original trailer where they had like the stones within, or the stepping stones that came up during the temple, that was used, I believe, if TSS could confirm to me once I'm done, I believe it was the same exact animation for that scene where before Giovanni walks up, they do like the 3D animation with the steps being revealed, and then afterwards he walks up to get the reveal glass. Would I be correct in that, TSS, or no?
The thing is, though, I haven't watched that specific moment in about 8 years, so I can't confirm anything, but I wouldn't be surprised, considering that usually they reuse a lot of CG animation, to drive down the production costs.
Right. And one more example I would put in real quick before I finish my opinion is that they from the same trailer of the original arc where they had Liepard use Hyper Beam, whether the same exact animation was also in the Untitled League, but the difference was that it was in the day, so obviously it looks a little more blended in.
I mean, to be fair, Pikachu's CG Iron Tail is probably one of the most used animations in this whole series.
Right. Which I thought was kind of good.
Yeah, but again, it's because if you see repetitive animation, that's because they animated using CG, and they just reuse it, and they just call it a day. That's what it is. That less time,
right?
More animation.
Right. But anyways, to finish up my thoughts on the Metaletta arc and then the whole thought overall, so I can give the others the platform to speak their minds about Team Rocket and what they liked about it and what they didn't. I thought the Metaletta arc was probably their best arc because of the build up and the way that they ended it and the way that they handled like the circumstances of like the circumstances of what they were trying to achieve. I thought it was pretty interesting of how they drew in those storylines. Like they so because if you remember the ending of the first arc for Linus, Tornadus, and Thunderous, Jesse said that, and I'm only pointing out the dub because I don't remember 110% of the original lines in Japanese, but what they said in the English dub, Jesse did, was that, one of these days that they're going to catch these legendary Pokemon and they will be caught. So it's obvious indication that they're going to, reappear again, whether it would mean in the minor arc or a major arc. So I thought it was pretty interesting to look back at it and know that, hey, they were foreshadowing this type of event to happen. Maybe not in the same circumstances of the event, but they would definitely appear later on. Obviously, and then after the Metaletta arc, as we all knew, they were gone for a little bit. But then they came back episode end, the very first episode, and they came back with a little bit more, I would say, somewhat of a balanced approach. And by that, I mean like they had their moments of being a little bit funny, goofy, or whatever, but they were still mostly evil. They were still carrying out like their own missions, and well, I mean, most of it was to fuck with Team Plasma, but to somewhat of a success, I would say. And then obviously afterwards, when the Coral Islands came around, they were just kind of back to it was still like the same balanced approach, but obviously that was kind of like the only good thing that arc had going for it. So but overall, I thought Team Rocket, I definitely enjoyed their involvement in Best Wishes, the way that they were kind of handled for the most part. Now, obviously, of course, not everyone will agree with that, but hey, as long as we get the camaraderie here, then it's all good. First person I want to ask about this is actually Terrell himself, because me and him sometimes get into a little bit of discussion sometimes during our random calls of Team Rocket and Best Wishes. So I wanted to ask you, Terrell, what was your opinion about how Team Rocket was handled in this series and how they executed in Best Wishes?
Well, I mean, so I think I've been pretty, for those who don't know, but I've been pretty straightforward about when it comes to Team Rocket. I recognize what Team Rocket is nowadays, which is they've become more popular in the comedy joking sense, and I get that people like them a lot in that lane. The problem is that Team Rocket's also been a crutch for a lot of episodes, especially in the early series, and actually became more of a crutch as time went on, depending on what region you're in, where they were used literally just to force character development because it was like, fuck it, we don't know what else to do with them. And the one thing I appreciated about them being more traditionally evil in Best Wishes is that I tend to like them more there because you didn't see them every fucking episode. I'm the kind of guy that I can't really miss something if I see it all the goddamn time, which is my issue with Team Rocket. Team Rocket had gotten to the point where they were in episodes just as consistently as Ash was, and it was like, bro, I get it, but to me, the characters aren't good enough. They're characters who have a lot of potential, but in the comedy section, they will never grow past their one jokes or the one or two emotional episodes they get. So why do I want to keep seeing them in that lane? So when I got to see them as evil, they didn't rely on them all the time because they had them doing background shit, or maybe they would be in an episode for a little while, but they weren't like the crux of an episode. So it allowed the main characters to breathe more. And then on top of that, when we got to the arcs, people I get people are bummed about the stupid Team Plasma and Rocket arc.
Right.
I personally don't care anymore. And the main reason why is because Team Rocket's arcs in Best Wishes were so fucking good. I didn't miss it. I would have preferred a Team Plasma arc, but I just don't care about being bummed out about it anymore because the arcs I got are so fucking good and they were so consistent. And I appreciated pretty much, I don't think there was a bad arc of theirs. And then you did have some that were more comedy focused, like the Meowth arc that led into
Nimbasa.
led into the Nimbasa arc. So I was like, it wasn't like it was all seriousness, but the ones that were fucking great. Hell, people don't even realize this is the first series in a while where you saw Giovanni in the flesh back in the actual region they were in.
I was like, oh shit.
Because it's so fucking rare. He was used as a bunch of visual gags for the longest time. Well, imagine what they'll do with this Pokemon. Then they would get this dumbass animation of him doing something with the Pokemon of the episode. I just appreciated, because to me, I feel like the show in general got an overall benefit. Not only did they get a benefit, but God, the show got so, because then that makes the series arcs we got way more they had higher stakes because of it. But that's my general opinions of it.
Oh no, yeah, I agree. And to add on real quick before I ask the next person, I think the only arc I wouldn't really consider it an arc, but at least their involvement, I would say that their involvement in a plan or whatever mission, I thought was pretty weak, and I think I don't see how. I mean, if you disagree, then people disagree, but I thought the Cottony arc, mini arc, whatever you want to call it, I thought that was kind of the weakest overall. I thought it was more so of, hey, here's Cottony, here's what it looks like, here's what it can do. I mean, I just thought that's what that episode was in particular. Although some people could argue the LGM's episode, but I would argue that that episode was actually better in almost every sense. So I guess the next person I wanted to ask is, Paula herself. What did you think about Team Rocket and Best Wishes, of how they were executed, and were there some things you liked about it, or were there some things where you just kind of not really down to earth with? So what were your thoughts on them overall in Best Wishes?
I definitely see Terrell's point, just because I also was getting kind of tired of the same formulaic nature of OG through DP, how they were used as a crutch. The thing that I didn't like was how jarring their personalities were. It's like the writers felt like they had to make them completely evil in order to carry out a successful villain arc. When in the past, that actually hasn't been the case. I mean, if you look at the Lugia arc in Johto, and I know Johto's not the best uh, series to compare anything to, but I think that the Lugia arc was actually handled pretty well. And as opposed to in the movies and in other arcs, like say the Galactic arc, where the trio actually, you know, aids the good guys. They didn't actually aid the good guys in the Lugia arc. They wanted to still take that Lugia, but steal it from Butch and Cassidy and just give it to the boss themselves. So, and they still did it with their goofy, good-natured personalities. So I just thought it was extremely jarring to the point where even their own voice actors were upset about it, and even fans in Japan. It's kind of hard to get. I'm sure TSS would agree with me. It's kind of hard to get Japanese fans riled up like that to the point where I'm pretty sure they wrote letters and complained. So I definitely agree with them. I mean, because they're such beloved. I think my whole point is that it really always comes down to whether you are invested in them as individual characters. Because if you don't care about them, and if there's just a segment of the anime that kind of annoyed you for years on end, I could definitely see where some fans like Terrell are definitely happy about that refreshing aspect. But for people like me who really, really like Jesse James and Meowth are some of my top. They're in the top 10 of my favorite Anippo characters. It was really upsetting to see all the development kind of stripped away, and it's like I'm like, who are these people? Especially after Jessie and everything she went through in Diamond and Pearl with her whole contest stuff and even their Pokemon. Like we barely even got to bond with their Pokemon. Like when I think about it, honestly, I forget which ones they had, and they didn't really even have much of a personality. I just felt like I couldn't personally connect to this version of them. And I feel like it just wasn't necessary to make such a jarring change from the Diamond and Pearl series to this one just to pull off a villain arc. Like, I feel like they could have still pulled off the Plasma Rocket villain arc without them being, like, kind of unrecognizable in their personalities. So that's kind of my thoughts. And Lumios trainer Zach brought up a good point because we were discussing best wishes a couple of days ago on a voice chat, and he said that even if the earthquakes hadn't have happened, he thinks, and I think this too, not to be a Debbie Downer, but that the trio was going to go back to being their old selves anyway, regardless of the earthquake. So I don't really think the earthquake is completely to blame.
No.
Yeah, that's just my thoughts. I'm kind of extreme in that regard, but I'm just a little bit biased because I genuinely love Jesse James and Meowth. So, yeah.
Oh no, I agree. Obviously, if the voice actors themselves are not pleased with the direction of the characters, then it's completely understandable. And while I am someone that obviously sides with Terrell in the sense that hey, this new team, well, not new Team Rocket, but you know what I mean. This Team Rocket approach is a little more refreshing because it's not just. I understand that people definitely enjoyed like the Team Rocket where they're more goofy centric, but the good-hearted villains, as you pointed out. The reason why I enjoyed Best Wishes Team Rocket was because it was just again breath of fresh air, and I thought that around episode end there was like somewhat of a balanced approach of how to deal with both personas. I know that it wasn't extremely too goofy centric in Best Wishes when they did go to the balance approach. Like it wasn't too obvious, but I thought just for the idea itself, I thought they did a pretty decent job with it. And obviously if people disagree, that's fine. But I just thought that it was kind of like refreshing to see something like this coming out of them, especially when it gets to the point where it's like like the idea of the repetitiveness and what else can they do. Like something had to like change up a bit, as we've seen the Pokemon anime do sometimes, where they take away like the old idea and then put in something new, and then there comes like a variation of opinion. So I guess the next person I'll ask, since you did mention it, and I was going to ask him anyways, I would then ask TSS the same question. Like, what are your thoughts about Team Rocket? Were there some things you liked about it? Were there some things you didn't like about them? And overall, what did you think?
Well, first of all, if if you really want the origin story of Team Rocket, you have to go back to 1975 to the Time Bokan series, having to do with an evil team called Gaikotsu, and there have been like several iterations of them throughout the Time Bokan series, but most people know in Yataman 77 as Doronjo, and that's exactly where the Rockets as a trio is the origin of them. So having a comedy, having them as a comic relief villains, that was the whole motif behind the original series, and that's why it went up all the way to DP. Now, yes, they have gotten more development as the years have gone by with all of the contest stuff with Musashi, and and then the backstory with Kojiro and stuff, and even Yarth too. They tried to flesh out a lot of their stories. The biggest problem is once you get to Best Wishes, it was a great idea on paper, but unfortunately they made Musashi like a freaking one-sided like cheap version of Carmen Sandiego and the Vile stuff, which I didn't really like in terms of personality. Personalities are actually pretty stale, in my opinion. And pretty much like as Polly said, the biggest problem that I see is that Japanese people almost never complain. If you piss off a Japanese person enough to complain, you fucked it up, and that's exactly what they did. Even after releasing 4 radio dramas, CDs, they had like 20 something episodes. Shinichiro Miki and Megumi Hayashibara, they said themselves, listen, we didn't like the direction, and the Japanese audience agreed. Like I said, as far as trying something new, I give them tons of credit, but they handled it the wrong way. You completely stripped them of any sort of charming personality that they had, and then tried to make them something that they're not, when their origins were back to, like I said, Gaikotsu or Doronjo from the Time Bokan series. So you kind of killed off you kind of killed off 13 years of consistency in characters, and that's why at the end of end of Best Wishes, towards the end, they polled Japanese people which Pokemon would you want to see them come back, would to bring them back, and obviously we now know what the answer to that was. That was Sonansu or Robifet.
Right.
But they knew that the writers knew that they fucked it up. And to be honest, and I feel kind of indifferent, but like I said, it's kind of like it's kind of like a very bad execution of Carmen Sandiego and the Vile organization. Realistically, it's not something that I praise the writers for. I give them tons of credit for trying something new, but in the end, it never worked out, and that's why they had to revert. But yeah, that's basically my opinion, and then to have them come back in X and Y with a little bit of, they still had the harder edge, they still had the comedy, but they had the harder edge. So in that respect, they did evolve the characters, but they had to complete 180 from what they did in Best Wishes because of the backlash, and also because of just you ruined the legacy of characters that have been there. So that's the whole thing. So that's my opinion.
Right. And I'm just going to point this out for those that are listening by audio, visually, or whatever. But Tyrone did actually end up leaving for now. So obviously, I do thank him for being part of the video with his contribution to the questions I've asked him. Now that we've gone through Team Rocket and what we thought about it, and what we liked about it or didn't like about it, I guess the next thing to talk about are the rivals. And to me, I thought the rivals. Again, I'm only repeating this message a lot because I feel like people nowadays seem to tend to forget, and they regardless if they knew or not, they tend to like abuse it. Sorry about that. Anyways, so basically, I thought the rivals were not really forgettable in the series. I thought, each and one of them, whether it was for Ash, Iris, or Silent for that matter, I thought they were handled pretty decently well, to the point where, I can, first of all, I actually remember their names. Like, if I can remember their name, they're not that forgettable. So I definitely give the writers props for making them, again, not forgettable. And they had their moments of episodes to shine. Like, you had Stefan, who I probably considered to be the best one in the series, for Ash at least. And while Trip was decent, he just, I don't know. If you're coming from Diamond and Pearl with the expectations of Paul and the way that went, then you probably would be disappointed by a Trip. I'm not saying Trip is bad by all means, but overall, I thought he was a decent follow-up, not the greatest, as far as like main rival is concerned. Although, like I just said a second ago, I thought Stefan was the better rival, of course. And then all the other ones, Iris had her episodes with Georgia. Silent had, I think, like a couple with Burgundy. So all the characters had their moments with their rivals and their development, as far as like whether that relationship turned out to be good or they turned out to be bad. So I guess the first person I'll excuse me, I'll ask is Polly herself, and obviously the one I'm going to ask her, if you haven't followed her on Twitter already, I'm going to ask her about her opinions about Silent's rivalry ship, if you consider that a word, with Burgundy. So I guess the question I want to ask you about that is, how did you think that was handled? Were there some things you liked about the development of the rivalry between the two? Or if you don't want to call it rivalry, just call it friendship or whatever you may please. Or were there some things you didn't like about it? So just like, what were your thoughts about it overall?
As I always say with this series, I think the idea was really refreshing, but the execution was not that great. I thought it was kind of interesting to see. It was almost like a May and Drew effect, but the opposite, where Silent was the one who had the upper hand, and Burgundy was kind of like the one who was a little bit overconfident and then just flopped because she wasn't doing anything for the right reasons. So I thought that could have been an interesting concept to draw upon, and even I just think it goes beyond Silent and Burgundy, and it's just the problem is not expanding on the whole Pokemon connoisseur or sommelier, what have you, concept. It's like, what is it? They actually, when you said a couple of episodes, it's literally only two. It's Burgundy's introduction episode, and even that, the latter half was more Silent and Burgundy just having a battle, and Silent kind of trying to teach her a lesson through that battle, which I thought it was great. But it's like the first half was pretty much just her berating Ash. Like, it's an interesting introduction into what a Pokemon connoisseur is, but they just never really went anywhere with it. And I think what they should have done was take the other guy from the second connoisseur episode. His name was Pinot Noir in the sub, but Ricard Nouveau in the dub. Obviously, you can see where they're going with that. But they should have taken him and maybe have him acted more like a Harley towards Silent, because I think what they really should have done with Silent was draw upon the fact that he can get a little bit arrogant at times, And this is shown definitely in his dynamic with Iris, where Iris kind of has to take him down a few notches, you know, because he's always so sure that he's right because he is so well versed in science and art and what have you. Um, and he doesn't believe in, you know, the ideals, and like there's a lot of symbolism there between the truth and ideals aspect between him and Iris, which I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but I think they should have played upon that and had that been like a tragic flaw that maybe even Burgundy could have fed into a little bit, and maybe they could have built each other up, um, or developed each other in different ways. You know, with Cylon teaching Burgundy what it really means to be a great Pokemon connoisseur, but Burgundy also kind of taking him down a few notches with his a little bit of his arrogance or you know maybe his own overconfidence, um, you know, and we never even got to find out why he's afraid of Purloin. And I think it would have been interesting if Burgundy had a Purloin, which is actually what I theorize to happen in the future. She gets a Purloin and she actually helps him overcome his fear. Now obviously that's not canon, but I think that would have been amazing. I think what it all boils down to is that they had such good potential for a great rivalry and a different rivalry from what we've seen. But it just, again, just didn't really go anywhere. It just kind of suffered uh, for the Black 2, White 2 stuff with episode N and the DOS series. Other than that, though, I mean, I love Burgundy, obviously. I just love her personality. I just thought she was very different. I tend to like a lot of the sassier rivals, Miette, Burgundy, Georgia, Ursula, Harley. They just add this layer of, I don't want to say cynicism, but just like a different fun dynamic rather than the traditional like nicer quote unquote rivals. So yeah, lots of potential, but not really quite there is what I'd say.
Right. I guess, you know, it's definitely appropriate to say that Best Wishes definitely had like some missed avenues of potential. Well, before I hand it off to the next person of the same question, obviously, I do gotta well, all I have to do is just go over to the kitchen real quick and grab a few things. But I do want to ask TSS the same question. Not necessarily of the same rivalry ship because I only asked probably that specific question because I know she strongly resonates with both of them. But if TSS, you know, if you had any particular comment, opinion about any of the rivals, and not just any particular ones, but overall, you know, like how did you think that Best Wishes handled all the rivals, whether it was for Ash, Cylon, or Iris? Like, did you think they were handled good? Did you think that it was bad? Or, you know, what did you think? And then afterwards, if I'm not back before you end, then you may pass it off to Terrell. So, go ahead.
Okay, so I feel that it's a mixed bag. Honestly, some of them are better than others. Like I'll give you example. Shooty or Trip. That was bad. That was a really bad rivalry, especially since we came off of Shinji. Definitely, you know, or Paul. Definitely a 100% downgrade. However, we got a 100% upgrade with Kenyan or Stefan. But I feel as if they would have done this, if they would have done Kenyan's stuff maybe slightly earlier and had maybe a slightly better pacing, you know, and get him. I mean, he's involved a lot, but I would say if he would have came in a few episodes earlier and had a chance to be more. I mean, I don't think I would change how he was fleshed out, but maybe give him a few extra episodes. Because honestly, you know, he had to make up for what Shruti was basically, was just the jackass with the fucking what was it, the Canon power shot fucking camera. That's basically how I view him, just a jackass with a Canon power shot. As for Dent, as for Dent's rivals, I would say, again, the rivalry is there, but there's like, it's like you're trying to like eat at the bone. It's like you the problem is it's like trying to get a piece of chicken, but you got a piece of KFC instead of a piece of Popeyes. There's not enough meat on the bone to really make me give a fuck about a lot of it.
Jesus Christ, man!
I had to do that because if you compare it, it's like we want this giant ass chicken, but we got this fucking small ass thing, and I'm like, what is that?
I mean,
like,
it's true.
It is, and it's true for even Iris's stuff too. Again, it's like they had it. You had the plate, but you had to give us the shittiest chicken writing on planet Earth.
Like
in terms of like development, your ideas were there, but the execution was shit.
I'm gonna somewhat disagree but on a different level. So
go right ahead, Tara.
With Silent and Burgundy's, I think my main issue, I don't think is that you had the shittiest chicken. I think you gave me chicken, but you only gave me like the skin. Like the meat was there, you just chose to only eat the fucking skin. Because to me, saying that there was no meat would imply that there was no potential. No, there was 100% potential. It's like you gave me a pristine burger, you just didn't know how to fucking cook it. That was the problem in that situation.
I was more like comparing the sizes.
That's fine.
Yeah, that's what I was going for. You have a giant piece with a lot of meat on it, but then you have a smaller one with like very little meat on it. It's like,
yeah. My issue with Silence is that it's I think Paulie mentioned it already, but it's super one-sided. Like there is no back and forth with them. It's literally Burgundy ain't shit the whole fucking show. Like the whole show, Burgundy isn't shit. She gets like these really small moments, but they're only when she's with Langley and they're like talking together. They're not really moments with her and Silent. It's always like some side, like even when Silent loses in certain situations and she's there, she doesn't really interact with him. She's always on the back making some sort of side comment. And low key, it's funny. Like as a comedy thing, it's kind of funny. But it like the Langley Burgundy stuff is funny in that reason, but like it does nothing for the rivalry. Langley and Iris's, I think, is a little bit more fair though, because they go pretty much back and forth. Like she roasted the fuck out of Iris when she had that Dragonite that she couldn't control for a while. I thought that was pretty consistent for the most part. The biggest issue with her is that she's just not shown enough. That was my biggest problem. I thought the interactions were fair. Like sometimes, especially early on, Iris used to talk a bunch of shit. And then, of course, it's over the course of the series. So Langley would roast her for not having any real qualities as a trainer and how she couldn't control her Pokemon. And then as the series changed, she grew into a better trainer. The problem is that Langley didn't have any underlying issues like that you could really pull from. It felt unbalanced in that sense. The beginning of it, I think it was fine. It's just that the dynamic didn't keep up as you continued on. And then to quickly address Ash's. Ash suffers from having too many hands in the fucking kitchen and everyone's burnt their finger or some shit. Like, Bianca works as a comedy relief-based rival, but I guess my problem is that it doesn't amount to much after that. It just is literally, she's like Barry, except less competent battle. That's what she reminds me of, which is not the best thing because Barry got on my nerves low key. She kind of hits the same tone, but I didn't mind her as much because she was more comedy oriented and she wasn't trying to be anything extra. My problem with Trip is simple. Trip is literally a mixture of Paul and Charon from the games, and I'm like, bro, he suffers worse because of it. Because in the beginning he's obviously trying to be somewhat of a Paul clone, except not as ridiculous as Paul was.
Exactly.
And then you hit the fucking the Meloetta arc stuff, or the tournament. You hit some of the later tournaments, and he's on full cheering mode with Alder, and I'm like, bro, I get it, but like this is like you could tell Trip really isn't his own character, and that's like my biggest problem with him. I can tell your backbone, and I shouldn't be able to see your backbone with your shirt down. It's ridiculous. That's Trip's problem. Stefan is essentially the realized version of I forget his name, the samurai trainer from the Hoenn League. He reminds me of that, or like he's like to me, Stefan.
Masamune.
He's more like the realized version of the friendly rival, but like it's more like this, like we're bros, kind of like what Richie was in Kanto. That's what Kenyon hits me as, and he ends up being the better rival for it because he's not anything overly complex. He doesn't have this deep ass backstory. They're just bros. They like to fight and they throw hands. And if it was just those three, we'd be fine. And then you have fucking Cameron and goddamn Virgil. And I was like, Cameron suffers from one, being added in too fucking late. And two, people hated that him being added in late and then winning the league or being the one to beat Ash made it worse. I don't think Cameron's a bad character. He's just introduced too fucking late. Best Wishes, for some reason, felt the need to act like you already had 5 fucking rivals. You added in 2 more, and they're both Ash focused. Virgil literally gets 1 episode before he's introduced in the league, which is his introduction episode. So I'm like, bro, what is this? Like, I don't really understand what the point was to add those 2. I think Cameron works better than Virgil does, but that part of it is that Virgil just doesn't get enough screen time for you to like. Like, he's not bad with his whole EV focus, but he doesn't have enough time for you to really like. Cameron, I think, is fine, but I feel bad for Cameron because Cameron has such a mean fucking stigma based off of his league victory off of Ash. That's literally because I don't remember people hating that character innately. People hate that character primarily because of the league, and I feel like that's not fair to the character because I think he's actually fun. He kind of hits that same like bro, like we're cool rivalry, but once again because he's introduced late and because of his league win, fuck all that. He's a piece of shit now. So I agree very much in the mixed bag category. There's things you could have done to fix that situation, and maybe not adding as many rivals and just focusing on like the one for Silent and Iris, and then leaving Ash with probably Kenyon, Trip, and Bianca, and I think he would have been fine. But you can't change the past, unfortunately.
No, you can't. Actually, and before we move on, obviously, I took a look at the chat and noticed that you have to stream it a little bit. So I guess I'll ask you this last question. Then afterwards, you're obviously more than welcome to leave. So I guess just for the purpose of that, I just want to ask you for your quick opinions, if you have any, or I guess a long thought, if you have any, of like the last 2 arcs. And what I mean by the last 2 arcs, I'm more so referring to like episode N and the Decor Islands. Just want your opinions about those, if you have any. And if not, then obviously thank you for your contributions to the video, which means a lot.
All I'm gonna say is episode N to me isn't a bad arc in it as a Pokemon anime. If you only watch the anime, I don't think N arc is bad. If you play the games, the N arc is a disappointment, primarily because they threw in a bunch of shit between Black 1 and Black 2 and primarily focused on Black 2 plot, and it kind of fucked everything up. If you played the games, you could tell they pull from 2 different games which take place 2 years in between each other, so they can add in characters like Colress, and I was like, damn it. So like I like the arc, but I played the game, so it's a more of a disappointment for me personally. But I think if you were an anime only watcher, you probably wouldn't have minded the arc that much. And then the Korra, I initially, when I was reviewing it and when I first watched it, I hated that arc. I hated the Korra. now that time has passed and I've gone back and kind of reevaluated, I don't really think it's that bad. It's only 13 episodes. I mean, people don't realize this. Declare, we always talk all this shit about Declare. Declare is not even that long. Declare is like 13 episodes, and there are a couple of good fillers in Declare.
Oh no, I agree.
There are still some that are fucking dog shit, like the Oak and Rotom one. Fuck that one. But I don't. They used it, but I think for the most part, it's handled relatively okay. You had some interesting stuff thrown in there, like introducing early XY stuff with adding in Viola's sister and shit. And then you got some decent episodes, like the chili focused one. I think there's a Cottony and a fucking Butterfree episode in there that both are pretty much the same thing. Why did you fucking do that? There's a decent Ash and Iris one. There's some decent filler in there. My God, it came. Why in the series that way? And then it fucking felt like the ending got rushed. With them with like I think I would argue Best Wishes probably has like the worst like final episode in that sense.
Oh no, it did.
Yeah, because the goodbye is so whatever, and it pisses me off because I think the series deserves more than that. The core as a whole is I would say is mediocre. I wouldn't say it's terrible, but man, episodes, and I would say of the 13, there's probably, if I'm being real, it's probably like 5 of them are kind of fucking dumb. Everything else I think is pretty.
By the way, did you say like something 5 seconds ago? For whatever reason, I think it may have cut out.
Say what?
Right before you said like 13, there was like I think there was like a cutoff. So if you could repeat that again, if you may.
Oh, I was saying of the 13 episodes, I think 5 of them are probably bad.
Okay.
Or like,
and one with a quick thing, not to hold you hostage, of course. But obviously, if I remember correctly, your movie rankings for this series. Obviously, you don't have to give an opinion about it since you do have to go stream. But I imagine if I had to guess, I believe your ranking of the movies is 15 number 1, 14 2, 16 3. Would that be correct?
Yeah, because 15 is Keldeo, 14 is Zekrom,
or Reshiram, or whichever one you prefer.
Zekrom, Reshiram, and Victini, and then 16 is Genesect. Yeah, because Genesect is fucking dumb and dog shit. Victini's surprisingly better than what I thought it was, and Keldeo is still one of my favorite because Keldeo reminds me of Movie 3, and Movie 3 is GOAT. So yeah.
Yep. Well, obviously, thank you for your contributions to the video. It really means a lot to hear from the Best Wishes ambassador looking back at the series he reviewed 10 fucking years ago.
You're gonna keep doing that.
Yeah, hey, listen, I gotta prop you up, man. That's just how we do it here in this channel.
Fine.
But no, in all seriousness, thank you for being in the video. Yeah, just thank you for your contributions.
No problem. Y'all have fun, guys.
Of course. Enjoy your stream.
All right.
Peace, soul. All right. So I guess obviously with just me and the other 2 left, obviously we will narrow down the topics just a little bit to talk about. Obviously the thoughts about episode N, the Coral Islands, if you have any, and the movies, or if there's any other topics of Best Wishes you two would like to talk about, then we'll talk about at the end. TSS, I'll ask you this next one for episode N. I just want to know simply, your thoughts on that arc overall. Did you think it was handled well? Did you think it was handled badly? Or what did you think overall of that entire arc?
Clusterfuck.
Ooh, clusterfuck. All right, let's hear it.
Clusterfuck, because this was the rescheduled Plasma versus Rocket, but kind of in a very smaller scale, really, in my opinion. They condensed everything that could have happened within like 2 years into like 23 weeks or something like that. And as Terrell said, the biggest problem is they were mixing black and white 1 and 2, which doesn't work. And as a character, the anime persona was fine. I am perfectly fine with his character. I think the anime did flesh out his character very well, but the way that they handled the whole climactic scene, like the whole climactic arc, but which is the last few episodes or so, I feel that it wasn't worth it for me, in terms of the payoff. Um, Again, a lot of it seemed rushed to me, and a lot of it just doesn't seem justified. At least, having I'm not saying that the resolution was horrible. I'd say the resolution was fine, but I'd say the build up, and also due to the fact that we never got Yajiru Shinate 2013 full version, which is kind of a criminal. That's BNL 2013. We never got a fucking full version of that. That's a fucking crime. And basically and also with in regards to the intro, we didn't see fucking Charizard fight in this shit. So it's like,
Yep, very misleading.
yeah,
Very.
they completely like circle jerked us into that. But like I said, I'm not gonna hate on it, but I wish that I wish they would have done something better. But I'll give it a pass due to the circumstances. But they had so much more they could have done if the earthquake didn't happen. As for Da, mixed bag as well. Yeah, fuck the Oak episode. Fuck that shit.
Now see,
throw that in the garbage.
oh no, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, the filler was fine. The rest of the filler was all right. But realistically, I have nothing. It's just a filler arc. It's like Orange Island's light. So, except there wasn't really a goal. It was just, oh, let's kill an entire like 13-week anime season just for no reason. But the biggest problem that I find with Da is that it really didn't advance any of the character development much. So that's kind of like, now was kind of giving me vibes of like the Diamond and Pearl drought in a way, where just go around somewhere and get nothing done. And that's what it is. Again, it's not bad, but it's not good either. I'd just call it mediocre and call it a day. That's it. Done.
Yep, that's the way it is exactly. But no, anyways, Polly, same question to you. Your thoughts about how they handled episode N and both the Coral Islands. Were there some things you liked both of them? Were there some things you didn't like about them? And were there some things you felt like they could have, they missed or they could have improved on? And then afterwards, I'll ask both of you guys for your thoughts on the movies and somewhat of a ranking. And then afterwards, we'll give our final thoughts and then, end the show. So, yeah, handing it up to you now, Polly, to answer the question of those two arcs.
Well, to be quite honest, I actually haven't seen episode N, and I haven't seen the movies, so I can't really give a fair opinion on either of those. I will say that for the viewers watching this, I'm someone who's always played the games years after that particular corresponding anime season has come out. So episode N for some reason just never really looked appealing to me. For some reason, even the Galactic arc, the Flare arc especially, they were two villain arcs that actually I really enjoyed, and I there was great build up, and I think that's something that helped pique my interest, because I didn't really know what was going to happen because I didn't play the games. In fact, I still actually haven't played Black and White. So I guess me watching it, I guess what Terrell said, I'm not sure how exactly my personal perception of it would have been, but from what I've gathered from a lot of hardcore Black and White fans, it just didn't live up to the greatness of because one of the biggest one of the greatest points of the Black and White games was its storyline. So when you have something that's kind of weaker compared to it, it's not really gonna, gauge much interest, I guess, or it's gonna pale in comparison. As for the DA season, I'm actually kind of the opposite of Terrell, where I liked it a lot in the beginning, but then I started getting kind of angry because I was obviously the rivals are my favorite part of Best Wishes, and they just completely dropped the ball on them. After the Univa League was over, goodbye. We never saw them ever again. I even thought the Stride and Jim episode was mediocre, and that's the last time we ever saw Chili and Cress. And it was just this dumb filler about this rando girl coming to take over the gym. I just thought a lot of the episodes, similar to what Terrell said, like the season was just mediocre. I felt like it just shouldn't have been. It was just kind of like a throwaway, a final season. And like there were a lot of great moments in Best Wishes. Like I thought the Operation Tempest was great. Obviously, the John George tournaments were awesome. It's like they could have done more of that in this final season. And it's like using a whole season to promote Kanto or to make more parallels to Kanto just kind of wasn't a great look. Especially when all this other development that should have happened got shafted. It's like Silent and Iris's development, the Rivals development. It just all that was like thrown away, and that's where I kind of blame the Da series. I did like some episodes. I like how they brought back Liza from the Pacific Valley, obviously Claire. I'm glad they kind of brought back, made some Johto references. It was nice seeing that. But other than that, I'm indifferent to Charizard. I like him. I don't really care either way. But you know, it just that's just my opinion. Yeah, and I thought the goodbye was kind of mediocre too. I actually like it a little bit better than the advanced goodbye because I was disappointed. I thought the advanced would have been a little bit more emotional, at least on May's end. But again, I don't really want to get into comparing different goodbye episodes. But yeah, it just could have been handled better. Yeah. So.
Right. Well, I guess since I haven't given, because I want to give these two the opportunity to give their opinions out of both, I'm going to go on ahead and give mine out as well. And then obviously we'll go down to the last two, which is, the movies. Doesn't have to be like a long opinion. It could just be simply, oh, I like it. And this is where I put it in the ranking. And then we'll give our overall final thoughts of the series. And then we'll just end the show. For me, I'll start with episode 9 because obviously it was after the league, which if you guys seen the video where I talked about the Unova League being the worst, I just thought that that was just kind of like not really a waste of my time, but it was definitely a testament to like not necessarily missed potential, but a definite misfire, because I feel like it definitely had like the potential to really not be the best, but it definitely had potential to be a lot better than it did. But because of like some things that they didn't really execute on that greatly, it suffered as a result of that. So in case you want to see my full thoughts on the Unova League, in case for those watching the video curious, then it'll be on my channel as episode 1. But anyways, episode and yeah, I have to agree. And this is probably gonna be admittance of bias or whatever. But I thought, because I am someone that watches the anime and also plays the games. So I come into episode 1 thinking, oh well, I understand that there are some things that they can't replicate that well. That they can't replicate that well from the games to the anime. I get that. Like for example, there's no way in hell that they're gonna bring that one scene from the games, referring to Black 2 White 2, where Getsus literally commands Kirim to kill you. Like, I get that. I get that's the sort of thing that they're not going to transition into the series. But the first man I want to talk about is, Getsus himself, actually. I think I've been pretty adamant. If you guys, and by guys I mean, the people in the call or, the people watching the video, if you ever came up and talked to me about like, hey, what do you think about Getsus in the anime? First of all, I thought Getsus in the anime was easily the worst. And the reason why I think that is because he just doesn't. Again, I get there's some things you can't bring over for the games into the anime, whether it's because it's a kids show or whatever. But I thought the way that they handled Getsus was really, really generic. He was just Getsus to me was just the villain that just sits there in his chair and just like only gets like the things that only gets told the things he wants to hear, and the results of like Team Plasma's progression in terms of like Chorus's experiments, and then the Light Stone and whatever. Although Getsus was the one that kind of announced that, but anyways, yeah, Getsus I thought as a character and his contributions to this episode end was rather disappointing because it felt like to me that he could have been a lot better as far as like what he did in episode end. I thought that maybe he could have been a little bit more commandative, which is kind of weird to ask for because Getsus is basically nothing but a manipulating person and someone that will get people in aligned with his vision, and if he didn't, then you'd be thrown to the garbage basically. While we got a glimpse of that somewhat, it wasn't really satisfying at all. I thought the other characters and honestly was handled the way I thought he would be handled. So I'm somewhat neutral about that. His sisters, I think it was his sisters or friends, but I believe it's his sisters. Basically, I thought they were handled about as well as I thought they would from the games. And then obviously you got the grunts, like the main female grunt and the main, male grunt. Pretty generic grunts where obviously one of them is distinctively the leader and the other one is just the sidekick. Honestly, and I will say this, I thought the way that they handled Looker was obviously not anything special because obviously Looker is only there to bust these criminals and have them arrested because obviously that's his job. But the way that they evolved him and kind of rekindled his relationship with Team Rocket, which if you watch the Galactic arc, you would know like the relationship between these two. But I thought the way that they not only handled that, which they didn't really do much for, but I don't think they really needed to. I thought the way that they handled Luca was pretty awesome. Like he had like a couple of moments where I was just like, wow, he still is just as awesome as he was in Diamond and Pearl. Like for example, where he had like the crowbar and he was, running up to Chorus to basically, fill in the lines with that crowbar. And then, obviously he needed like 3 or 4 plasma guys to stop him. I thought, wait a minute, I thought they would just kind of like water it down a bit and just show like something a bit more kid friendly. But no, I thought Looker was handled pretty well. The other characters, mainly the ones that we've already seen a lot, obviously the main trio, Juniper's dad and all that stuff. Not very much to say about that because they were handled the way I thought they would. Obviously, as a Charizard fanboy, I because I have no problem admitting that. As a Charizard fanboy, however, I was excited to see him because obviously, when you see Ash's Charizard, it's like, great. It's one of his famous Pokemon. It's a Pokemon that a lot of people associate Ash with. As someone who is a fanboy Charizard, I was disappointed with the way that they handled it. Obviously, the misleading opening part didn't help at all. But it felt like to me that while yes, it was nice to see Charizard, I just didn't really feel after rewatching it, because I did rewatch some of the episodes, the ones I've kind of like neglected on. After looking back at it, I'm just like, it was nice to see him, but did he really need to be there? That's what I felt. I mean, and I have no problem admitting that, even if it is my favorite Pokemon of all time. It just felt like to me that even if you removed Charizard from the equation, I felt like not really much would have changed. And if your goal was to do something a little bit different and have Charizard be a little bit more useful, then obviously that goal was obviously not met, and it would have been a disappointing result. And I think the first step you would have done to fix that is to, I don't know, not mislead us in the opening to where he would have been a little bit more involved, but obviously it was probably just on the cutting floor. So yeah, overall episode end, like Terrell said, if you're someone that plays the games, then you'll be very disappointed with the way that this arc went. But if you're just watching the anime, then it's okay. It's not the greatest, but it's okay. I mean, that's the best way I could probably put it. And obviously, of course, the Core Islands. I never had much to say about that. I mean, obviously, there were a few episodes, like he also said as well, where they were pretty decent for what they were. I thought the Ash and Iris episode was actually that episode. I feel like I rewatched a lot because I did thoroughly enjoy like the idea behind it. And while yes, we've seen something like this before, somewhat, it was still like something where I could just sit down and watch and just not feel bored about it. And the other episode, what was the other one I liked? I mean, I thought the Butterfree one was pretty decent. Obviously, it was a callback in a way to Ash's, even though the one the one that was in the episode wasn't his. You can tell that there was that was them basically trying to go back to what it was before in Kanto with the way that he trained up his Butterfree and how that went. So it was basically a copy and paste somewhat into only 23 minutes of an episode, or 24, whatever you want to call it, or 26. I will agree the ending of Best Wishes, the way that they handled it was pretty garbage, because to me, here's what I look for. When I watch a ending of the Pokemon anime season or region, whatever you want to prefer to call it by, the thing I'm looking for is the impactfulness of the ending. I'm looking for an ending that summarizes their journey together. I'm looking for the meaningfulness at the end, because the ending is a perfect opportunity to just recapture the magic, the moments that happened across the journey that made these characters grow in your eyes. Like, obviously they're not going to be the same characters as they were coming from day one into day 128, let's say, or 141. So I guess what I'll say is that the ending was just, again, mediocre, because it's like, it felt rushed. The goodbye montage, the clips that we've seen for various episodes was pretty nice. That was like the only thing it had going for it. And then afterwards, it just, I don't know. I just didn't have any feeling to it. I just didn't feel like sad about it. It was sad to see them go, but it was that type of sadness where it's just like, it's sad to see them go, but it's okay. I'm not saying that every ending has to be like tier worthy, but the ending does have to be a bit more impactful and have a little bit more, as the joke was made earlier, more meat to their bones. So overall, I thought the ending of that was pretty garbage. And yes, it still is jarring to see Best Wishes Ash in X and Y clothing, and I don't know why, even after 10 years or longer than that, it still is kind of a bit of a mismatch, but whatever. Overall, I guess one of the last things we'll ask is about the movies. I know Paula hasn't seen the movies, so but if you do, if you have some sort of opinion or 2 cents about it, then I'll obviously give the floor to you, and if not, I'll ask TSS the same question, and obviously what he would rank the movies as. So.
Yeah, no, I don't have too much of an opinion. I would like to see movies 14, but yeah, the two like
right, dual movies.
and Zekrom. I love the soundtrack. Actually, that Zekrom, ironically enough, even though it wasn't composed by Miyazaki, that is one of my favorite soundtracks in the entire series. A lot of great, unique tracks. That's all I could really say, though, is I enjoyed a lot of the music, which was later used very heavily in X and Y. So I never really liked. I was so turned off by the idea of another Mewtwo, and I think that's why I just completely ignored Genesect.
Rightfully
and I think
so.
I was just at a busy point in my life during Keldeo, and is that it?
That's fine. Hey,
Yeah.
the movie for OC was really, really good. Like, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Even though, as you stated, the Zekrom one wasn't made by Miyazaki, it still was a good soundtrack. So TSS, I guess I'll ask you the same question. Your thoughts about each movie, and at the end of your thoughts of each movie, what would you rank them as? Like, who would be first, who would be second, and who would be third?
Okay, so want to make it clear, I never watched a Genesect movie, and from what I understand, thank God, because apparently that was the biggest piece of shit to grace this thing. Probably, well, I would have to see it for myself, but let's see how that would rank versus freaking movie 7, which I still think is the worst. In terms of the movie ranking, 15 is better than 14. I like Keldeo, not because of fucking Shokotan, but actually because of the real like story of Keldeo. Like wants to challenge uh Kirem, right? So it's like
Right.
want to get wants to be like this big tough thing, like, oh, I could take it on, and then completely gets fucking destroyed. Completely is underestimated, and just to see the progression in the movie, and then to see the um the through you have like Verizion and Tarakian, the three of them together, and Kobalion, those three together just completely like helpless, and then Keldeo has to find his way to defeat him. That, I think, it makes a better storyline than the Victini movie. The Victini movie is not a bad movie by any case of the word. It was kind of cool that they had a split movie there, because then you had a shiny Sazandara or freaking shiny Hydreigon in one of them.
Yeah, that was
As
cool.
far
That
as
was
the
cool.
difference, yes, as far as differences, which is pretty good, and storyline is great and all, but I still like Keldeo better, and but I'd still say 15, 15, 14, and probably 16. Well, probably if I watch 16, it's gonna be like, yeah, you made a fuck up with not only that fucking with the other shit, but it's like Genesect. Who gives a fuck about Genesect? I don't.
Unfortunately, that movie just kind of bombed. So I guess for mine's real quick, and then we'll wrap up the video with our thoughts on the series overall, of like your pros and cons about it, and just kind of like a final message on the series overall for this video. But for me, I guess I'll start with 14. I will admit, movie 14 was something that I never thought it was a bad movie, but it was definitely one of those movies where at first when you watch it, it was like, yeah, I liked it, but not as much compared to the other ones. And it was just one of those things where you gain more appreciation for as time goes on, as sometimes you would. Like, for example, sometimes you'll see a movie in like, January, and then you're just like, at the time you're just like, I don't really like it. And then as time goes on, you go back and watch it, and then you're just like, wait a minute, it's good. It's good. Like your thought about it has changed. And you kind of evolved in that sense. But again, I never thought movie 14 was bad. It just wasn't like, I just never really understood like the positiveness behind it. And then I decided to give it a couple more watches. And by a couple more watches, I mean like both versions. Um, and I thought, along with a strong OST and the good storyline, as you pointed out, I thought, it was a pretty good movie. Now, it's not exactly top 10, because if I remember correctly, I made a list last year in at a video with Terrell, and I believe it was around like the top 15. I think around like 14 or 13, ironically enough. So I definitely enjoyed the Victini movie, and I'm giving it a little bit more respect than I did back then, because it just wasn't something I thoroughly enjoyed. Not to say I shat on it or anything, but it was just one of those things where sometimes you don't give it respect until a little bit later on, once you start to appreciate what the movie was going for. And yes, I thought the idea of a dual movie was interesting, and I was genuinely surprised at the time that it was like their only time doing that. But with the logistics and everything, I can understand why that was the case. Um, Movie 15, obviously, it's my favorite on my list. As I mentioned, it is number 2, and I definitely like have my reasons as to why. Obviously, it's a repetitive thing to say, but I don't care, because it's just a legitimate fact. I did really enjoy the OST again. I thought it was really strong, and I thought the plot line with Keldeo, needing to muster up the courage in order to beat Kiram so it could save its friends, who unfortunately got frozen because of Keldio's actions. I thought the movie did a good job of like portraying well, not line, but like I thought it did a good job of explaining the idea that, hey, despite the fact that you might be the only one that could stand up to the challenge, there are some trials and character development you have to go through in order to make it to that point. And once you're at your highest point, and once you're able to muster up the courage to stand up against something, you're basically you can basically overcome anything. And to see that transform into Keldeo, who went from being a wimp to even have the thought of fighting back against Kiram, to someone who, spoilers for those who haven't watched the movie, to then evolve into the Resolute form and then having a outstanding fight, I would add, against Kiram, and to the point where there was a chance that you probably could have won. I thought the way that they handled that was incredible, and I thought the movie was really relatable. Relatable in the sense of like anyone that's gone through like a situation where they're a bit of a wimp at first to stand up to something or have the courage to, do something they want to do, but they know that they can't. I think this movie does a really great job of like portraying that step by step. And, obviously this movie puts strong emphasis on the fact that, hey, if you have your friends with you along the way who give you support, it's one of the greatest things that you can have in the world. So I really appreciate what movie 15 was going for, and I thought it was just incredible. Obviously it's number 2 because I thought movie 21 was just a bit better, but I think they're about as equal. Not to go off topic too much, of course. And lastly, movie 16, obviously, not as strong. Coming from movie 15, I thought that movie 16 would have that sort of idea again, but a little bit different. But obviously, when you see the movie, that's not really the case. I mean, obviously, it's just, I think the idea that they were going for is that, hey, you're from a different time period, and sometimes fitting in or trying to get, more aligned with what society is nowadays is really hard for some people. And obviously, the way that they respond is like a bit, they're trying to recreate of what they once had into today's society, which sometimes may be a good thing, or in this case in the movie is a bad thing. Obviously the Mewtwo thing, as I never understood like the whole Shudo estate thing back then, because I never was aware of that until obviously last year, where I heard about that while at the event of the Anime Expo screening of movie 22, which was when the first time I finally heard about that. And once I understood and I went back to watch the movie, it made perfect sense. Now, with that being said, Mewtwo was kind of decently handled. I wouldn't say it's the greatest, but it's not as bad. I mean, I could tell that they really... Well,
Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. I could tell that they somewhat tried to replicate of like what made Mewtwo great, but obviously there are some things you can't really portray because, of course, you even had to go through the mess of getting the confirmation of, Shudo, and, see if you can use the likeness of his character Mewtwo into the movie. So I could tell that they were trying to replicate some ideas of it that they could, but despite that, I wouldn't say Mewtwo was, because I know some people are like, well, Mewtwo made this movie kind of shit. I would argue that it's not really just Mewtwo. I just thought, the whole movie overall was kind of weak. Like, it just doesn't. I didn't. I mean, yes, the OST was good, but but like I said, it's like a statement that needs to be made every time out of fact, because Miyazaki is just, great at making music, but sometimes great music can't save a shitty movie. I mean, that's just an unfortunate fact. So I don't think Mewtwo was the reason for this movie being bad. I think there were just some other things that happened that contributed to the reasons of why the movie just failed in that retrospective. I'm not saying that it didn't have any good things going for it, but it was one of those things where the cons outweighed the pros. So as unfortunate that might sound, it was definitely the case for movie 16. So I guess for my rankings, obviously movie 15, number 1, because I really relate with the movie's plot and the idea that they were going for it. The OST was strong. and the way that the characters were handled were great, especially where the side characters actually did stuff, which I thoroughly enjoy seeing sometimes, and not just only the anime, but also and not just only the movies, but and also the anime. Movie 14, number 2. It had a good storyline, but there were some things about it where I was kind of like with it, but it was still like an enjoyable movie to the point where I could just again not feel like it was dryless or tasteless, whatever you want to prefer. Movie 16 obviously is the last one. It had like a variety of problems. I will say again that Mewtwo, I don't think was a big reason for that. I think Mewtwo was just one of those things where they kind of had to, deal with it anyways, because, they probably did try to attempt to bring the original Mewtwo as is, but when those efforts failed, they're just like, all right, well, we'll have to fill in that with something else, and that's what they came up with. So I don't think it's because of Mewtwo's character. I think there were other things about the Jansen movie that were pretty bad. So yeah, 15 number 1, 14 number 2, and 16 number 3. And yeah, I guess the final topic we'll bring in real quick before we end the episode is our overall thoughts of best wishes. And if you wish to give a ranking, then go ahead. Obviously, I'll give this next one to TSS. So basically, the question is your overall thoughts about best wishes. If you want to add in any comments that you didn't get to before, and just like your pros and cons of the series, and if you do have a score out of 10, what would you give it?
I consider this series the missed opportunity series. Reason why I say that is they had all the momentum coming from Diamond and Pearl, and well, we always joke that Satoshi freaking tripped on a ladybug before the fucking episode 1 happened, but we always say that there always has been some sort of a reboot of some kind. Last time that Pikachu was shot down level 1 really was AG, but this was the first one to really deviate on the regular formula, and in some cases it did work, but in most cases it doesn't. The Tohoku earthquake really affected a lot of the main meat of the evil arcs, and that was one of the things I wanted to dock off of. And as we mentioned earlier, the whole the rivalry thing again, writing was not the best there, and then having that, then having to deal with having to integrate having to integrate a sequel's games to the main story, which was the first time that has happened where we ever gotten a sequel in a generation, instead of like an enhanced version. That completely messed up the second half of the series, and then we had to wait for X and Y, which we had like all those filler arcs and then episode N. Dent and Iris, they're great. I'd still say that those two were probably the whole trio dynamic was probably the best part of the series, but my problem is everything around it was kind of mediocre. So overall, I'd give it a 6.5 out of 10. Just out of my thing, there's things to like. Like I said, I love Dent's personality and the train thing and the whole and his great knowledge, and he's the best one. He's probably the best character in that series, in my opinion. But everything else just falls flat at the end, and realistically, they had so much potential, but they wasted it. So 6.5 out of 10.
Right. Well, Polly, same question to you. Your overall thoughts about best wishes, some of the things that you wanted to talk about before that you either didn't thought of before or couldn't. Just like your pros and cons of your overall thoughts about the series, pros and cons, and if you do have a series rating out of 10, then I would like to hear that as well. So what do you think?
Yeah, I hate to sound uncreative, but I literally echo everything that I think TSS and I have a similar outlook on best wishes.
Mm-hmm.
It literally was the missed opportunity. And again, I mean, my heart goes out to the people affected by the earthquakes. And obviously, I know that was a big contender and why they couldn't do what they wanted to. But I feel like that combined, like they should have sacrificed some part of the whole marketing thing if they really wanted to make it a cohesive story. I think it just really suffered with all these different timelines going on, and maybe having less characters. I think they could have really done without. I hot take. I think they could have done without Trip. I think they could have done without Virgil. I think possibly they could have done without Cameron. I think Stefan, Bianca, Burgundy, and Georgia, they were fine on their own, and they had really dynamic personalities. And it just feels like everyone just got shafted for literally just chunks of nothing happening, but I will say that it just Best Wishes did a lot of things different that I did enjoy that wasn't present in the previous series. And I like that they broke away from the formulaic Team Rocket character of the day stuff. I like that Iris and Silent had more of a bantery dynamic both with each other and with Ash. What else? I like that the rivals, there were definitely more characters in this series, I think, than Diamond and Pearl had rivals, but the problem with that was they were just introduced kind of late. And yeah, I like how Ash had a rotating team. He caught more instead of the standard 5 in Pikachu. I like that Team Rocket wasn't in every single episode. I just didn't like what they did with their personalities, and they just kind of threw that away. And I also thought this series had some of the best filler. It was actually entertaining to watch. I mean, that Haunted Mansion episode, I don't think that's something we touched on. Like, when I think of filler it's entertaining to watch, sometimes I'll just go straight to Best Wishes because I know that's not going to be bogged down by that formulaic Team Rocket shows up. Character of the day has an issue. They need to show off new Pokemon, and then Ash saves the day. The end. They took a lot of different creative liberties, and I also think the Don George tournaments were some of the best arcs, honestly, in the whole show. It was just so entertaining and fun to watch. I literally go back to rewatch them. And the last thing was, what was I going to say? I literally forget. But, the movie episodes. I like those too.
Yeah, because there's the whole PokeStar Studio thing.
Right,
at least they integrated that properly from the games. At least I will say that they at least put a lot of effort into the lore of the games, even though they kind of stumbled on the main plot, but they did do a lot of things, like with Nobody and Kudari, the Subway Masters. That 2-episode parter is probably my 2 favorite episodes of that series.
Yeah.
Just the way that they handled that whole thing, handled it as a mystery. But again, having the in terms of the game lore focused episodes, aside from the plasma stuff, that ranks as some of my favorite in the entire meta series, because the way that they handled that. It's just unfortunate that while they were great in some aspects, they really dropped the ball in others, and that's why I still say missed opportunity to continue, Polly.
Oh no, that's really all I have to say. And I think the dub did a great job. I
actually agree with that.
Oh no, I agree as well.
Even the dub music itself.
I mean, that's the last series Loeffler did. Loeffler did, yeah. And
it wasn't. It
intrusive. It wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't at the point where, freaking flutes invading your fucking eardrums and shit, and it wasn't that bad. It wasn't obnoxious music. It was just very subtle,
Yeah.
which I wish they would do these days. But unfortunately,
Yep.
they think it's a freaking kazoo orchestra shit, and like
Yeah.
I just can't tolerate it.
Yeah, and keeping most of the music and
Yes,
picking some very unique voices. Love Burgundy's voice. Love George's voice. I didn't mind Jason Griffith as Silent. I thought he was fine.
that was good too. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, so that very good. Very good.
Oh no, yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I thought that, and I said it earlier. I thought the Best Wishes or Black and White dub, whatever you want to call it. I thought it was the last tolerable dub. And then XY came wrong, and then just like, yeah, I should probably just stick to Japanese now. But no, I guess for my overall thoughts, and then we'll pack up the episode. Obviously, I agree with the sentiment behind the fact that Best Wishes is without a doubt the definition of missed opportunity, and it's not really its fault per se because it definitely had some good great ideas going for it, but two things: either those ideas couldn't be done in the way that they wanted because of scheduling and stuff, and obviously because of the earthquake. Now, obviously, I share the same sentiment as Paula here, and obviously give my my heart and thoughts over to the people that were affected on that day by the earthquake, or tsunami, I should say, and just obviously because like, I mean both, but
Yeah,
both, but basically because that because
Fukushima.
going through and recover from a natural disaster is more important wholeheartedly than an anime episode of Pokemon. But with that being,
and that's one of the main reason, and that's one of the main reasons, by the way, that there's no earthquake or fissure in the anime anymore because of that.
right, and that's the more that you learn today, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know that. So right then and there is exactly why. But overall, just to continue on my overall thoughts about the series before we end. Again, I agree with the sentiment about the missed opportunity part because again, they had some great ideas going for it, but because of either scheduling or because of that event, as we just mentioned, some of those ideas couldn't be executed properly, or they did, but it just wasn't really the same. There just wasn't any good sentiment behind it. Not to say that they had some good things going for it, like for example, and I still stand by this 110%. I thought the Don George battle tournament arcs were really good. The way that they drawn out each arcs and the way that they build it up in within those arcs were very well done. Obviously, Ash versus Iris was for that first finals was interesting, and obviously the second one, which pretty much involved and I say mandatory, the mandatory Sock versus Fra battle. The way that they handled that with Kenyon or Stefan, whatever you want to call him, against the trainer of the other. I thought they handled that pretty well. And sadly, those two tournament arcs were way better than the Unova League. But again, if you see my video on that, you would know exactly why, because I'm not going to waste like another hour talking about it for this video alone. So yeah, I thought the way that they handled the battle tournament arcs were really good, and I kind of wish that they had that same mentality for the Unova League, but whatever. Team Rocket, again, I understand the sentiment behind some people as they say, oh, well, I liked it, but because of the fact that the reception wasn't really that great with some people and within the voice actors, it just wasn't really appealing to me. Or, if you like it or not, that's your opinion, and you have every right to have that opinion. But for me, obviously, the thing I'm going to resonate with is the fact that I thought the Team Rocket here was a bit refreshing because after 4 generations of them just being, the comedic relief, good-hearted villains, I kind of wanted to see a little bit more, as TSS said earlier, a little more edginess to them. And Best Wishes definitely, as I said earlier, did a great job of like giving us that what-if scenario, which was what if Team Rocket was this, very full-on edginess villains who are working in the background sometimes to work on missions, and then full front-up missions right in front of our faces. With the Nimbasa arc, the Lannis Tornadoes Thunderous arc, and then the Tortuga arc, which took like a couple episodes over time to reach to its conclusion, which I thought was very innovative thinking. I thought those were handled really, really well. And then the Metal Other arc obviously is the best one because, it's basically the same kind of thing with the Tortuga one in the sense of like how it took like episodes over time to build up. But I think with the Metal Other arc, it had a lot more higher stakes at hand, and the way that they executed it was well done. Episode End was where they again went back to the more balanced approach of like being like having a little bit of edgy spunk to them, while also showing off some comedic relief, good-hearted villains, the villain side of them. And then obviously the Decor Islands was just a continuation of that. So I thought Team Rocket, to me, was really refreshing to see in Best Wishes, the way that they were kind of like handled in that sense. But I do understand that, there are a lot of fans and the voice actors who have their displeasures with that. And obviously I give my respects to the voice actors who, despite their disliking of that, they still performed under those circumstances really well, and obviously I have to give respect to that. But lastly, I'll just throw everything else into accumulation. But overall, Best Wishes again was still a good. It's still a good series for me in some retrospective in some aspects. But I do think that it could have been a lot better if certain opportunities were made on the dot, or not necessarily on the dot, but just made in general, because you could tell that there were some ideas that weren't fully fleshed out, but because of scheduling that they necessarily couldn't, or maybe not because of scheduling, maybe they just didn't really do them. Like for example, the actual conclusion to the Connoisseur arc, like it would have been nice to see him go. It would have been nice to see the arc of him going from rank A to rank S, but obviously because of scheduling and stuff, it couldn't happen. So, Best Wishes is still a series I recommend for people to watch. If by the time of, because season one, because that's pretty much what it is at this point. Season one was something that I think people would enjoy if they just gave it like a chance to really let it flesh out. Season two's first half is pretty good, and then the second half of it was just kind of and then Episode End, as I said, if you play the games, it'll be disappointing, but if you just watch the anime, then it's okay. And then the Decor Islands, I think it's not really that good, although I will admit that there are a few episodes that would be worth the watch. And I thought, like I said, the ending of it was pretty bad, and it was just not memorable. Like probably the least memorable ending I've ever seen in Pokemon. Yeah, overall, those are my thoughts on Best Wishes. That's all of our thoughts. And obviously I want to thank you guys for obviously watching the video, and shout out to my buddies here who came on during the video. Tyrone earlier, who was here for like the first few minutes. Terrell, who was here for most of it, but I had to leave to go stream, for his contributions. And obviously, the ones that are left, Poly TSS, I thank you two for your thoughts and contributions to the video, and means a lot that you guys came on to support it.
All right, sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna go because it's like 2.5 hours, which is a decent amount to talk about Best Wishes. If you have your thoughts about Best Wishes and you want to give your thoughts about how the series went for you, if it was good for you, bad for you, or just your thoughts overall on everything that happened within the series, from the anime, movies, and whatever, post them down in the comments below. Be sure to follow these two on Twitter, Poly with Age of Trades, and TSS, which I believe is TSS_killer. And then obviously
on Twitter it's without.
Oh, it's without. Oh, okay. Okay, so basically it's without. For me, it's RFR97. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and the same handle over at Twitter. And what's the other third platform, which I don't remember for some reason. And then obviously you can follow Tyrone the God Free at Tyrone the God Free. And then Terrell, you can follow him at The Insane Game Freak. And then that's pretty much it. we're going to get out of here, ladies and gentlemen. But thank you guys for watching the video. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time for another episode of Richie's Thoughts and whatever content I post on the channel. And yeah, have a great night, everyone.